Welcome to the PHPDA Health Equity Fund 2026 Major Grant Letter of Intent Pre-Proposal Webinar. This pre-recorded video is available at phpda.org and will also be holding live webinar sessions on January 7th and January 14th at 1 p.m. We acknowledge the land on which we are meeting, the ancestral lands of Duwamish, Muckleshoot, and Snoqualmie tribes, and recognize their continuing connection to land, water, and community. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the Coast Salish people who are still here today. We recognize the systemic oppression of Indigenous people, enslaved Africans, and other historically exploited people, which has led to the disproportionality and representation and disparities in health of these communities we serve. The mission of the Pacific Hospital Preservation and Development Authority is to support and provide funding for the provision of the best possible healthcare in the Puget Sound region in an effort to eliminate disparities in access to health resources and improve health outcomes. Here is the PHPDA staff. I'm Mallory Fitzgerald. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Grants and Programs Specialist. Myself, along with Christina Bernard and Whitney Regan, will be presenting this webinar. Here's our agenda for this webinar. We'll go over eligibility, resources, funding availability, the application process, the online grant system, the letter of intent, the application, the proposal review. On our webpage is where you can find all the additional information regarding the 2026 major grant and the letter of intent under funding opportunities. You can navigate to the major grant page, which gives you some general background. Apply for a major grant, which gives you details on how to apply. An FAQ for frequently asked questions that we update weekly, and a list of funded projects, current and past. Funding availability. Funding availability for the 2026 major grant is 1 year of funding. That timeline would be a contract start date of July 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2027. You'll have the potential to renew your grant for an additional 2 years if you are awarded a first-year grant, so it could be 3 consecutive years of funding. You can apply for $50,000 to $200,000. In both the letter of intent and the application, if you're invited to apply, you must identify your funding request, and they should be similar to one another and not have a big difference between them. If you know that a project is going to cost $200,000 to run it, put that request amount in your LOI and your major grant application. If after you submit your letter of intent and after doing some planning, you find that there is a difference between what you requested in the LOI to what you now know for the major grant application itself, just make sure that that number is similar enough to one another. Eligibility. To be eligible to apply, your organization must be a nonprofit, government, or public organization. If you don't have 501c3 status, you can apply through a fiscal sponsor, and the fiscal sponsor needs to be the agency who submits the application and who will sign the contract if you are awarded a grant. New for 2026 is that each organization may only submit one application. And the focus of a proposal must address health access or outcome disparities for underserved communities and focus on a specific health-related project. We have a broad definition of health that includes medical, behavioral, mental health, nutrition, fitness, and health education. For project type, your project should fall under one of the following types: service delivery, advocacy, or program evaluation. For service delivery, services funded under this grant must be delivered within King County. However, clients and patients served under the program can reside outside of King County. If, for example, your program operates in multiple locations, but only one of those locations is in King County, this grant can only fund the portion based in King County. Advocacy projects can focus on King County or have a broader scope, including statewide initiatives. If the advocacy extends beyond the local area, your proposal must demonstrate an impact on health disparities in King County and the Puget Sound region. Program evaluation projects may include pilot or demonstration work, assessment of a program's effectiveness, outcomes or impact, or analysis of sustainability, scalability, or replica potential. Evaluation activities should be practical, program-focused, and tied to improving community health programs rather than solely academic research. Organizations that already have funding to operate a program but don't have dedicated resources to evaluate outcomes or demonstrate effectiveness may use these funds specifically for evaluation activities. New focus areas for 2026 are followed. We know that specific populations are facing heightened threats to their safety, security, and access to care, and the organizations that support them are experiencing drastic funding cuts. Our major grant program aims to support these organizations who are facing disproportionate burdens to their well-being. This year, major grants will be limited to organizations with projects in one or more of these three focus areas: gender-affirming care and/or HIV prevention and care for LGBTQIA+ communities, barrier-reducing healthcare delivery for immigrant and refugee populations that is responsive to community concerns, and access to birth control and abortion care. The mission of the PHPDA and the Major Grants Program has long been to achieve health equity in King County. By funding these three specific areas, we aim to deepen the impact and support that community organizations can provide to those who need it most. Before you submit a letter of intent, make sure that you're reading through the available resource documents. They will all be posted on the PHPDA webpage, and grant staff can also send these to you by request over email. Make sure that you read through the 2026 Major Grant Guidance. We have the application available to preview, as well as an online application tutorial available for you to review for the online grant system. We also have a resource on describing performance and program goals posted. Especially important to review the grant contract before applying, since you'll sign a contract in substantially the same form, with your program details added, and if you're awarded a grant. So make sure that you can sign the grant contract before you apply. For the application process, here's the timeline. 2 webinars will be hosted, first on January 7th and the second on January 14th, both at 1 p.m., at which time you'll have the opportunity to be present and to ask specific questions about your proposal. The deadline for questions submitted via email is January 22nd, a few days before the deadline for the letter of intent submission. January 26th is when you'll need to submit your LOI before 12 p.m. noon, and February 26th, you'll receive notification on whether or not you've been invited to submit a full application. I'll now turn it over to Whitney Regan to go over the online grant system.
Thank you, Mallory. You will find the link to apply on the homepage of the PHPDA website, or when you are on the homepage, you can select funding opportunities at the top, then apply for major grant. The link to apply is under the application process timeline. After you click on the link to apply, you will be prompted to log in. If you have an existing account, you can go ahead and log in, or you can create a new account if you do not have one. If someone has already created an account for your organization and you do not have login information, please email grants@phpda.org and we can help you get logged in. Once you log in, please review your organization's information, such as mailing address, primary contact, phone number, email, and tax ID. After you review your organization's information, you can select the Apply button at the top of your homepage. You can preview the LOI application before you apply by selecting the preview button within the 2026 major grant box. You do not need to start applying to see the full application. To start your LOI application, click on the Apply button within the 2026 major grant box. The system automatically saves your work every 100 characters you type, and when you click out of a question, you can click Save at any time. When you're ready to submit your application, make sure you click the Submit button, not the Save button. You must click Submit before 12 p.m. noon on Monday, January 26th. You will receive a confirmation email when your LOI is successfully submitted. Next slide, please. PHPDA will not review drafts of proposals. Questions about the LOI application process and program eligibility must be submitted via email to grants@phpda.org by 5 p.m. on Thursday, January 22nd. The grant staff will be available to assist with any submission or technology issues until the submission deadline of 12 p.m. on Monday, January 26th. The 2026 Major Grant FAQ webpage will be updated twice a week up until the submission deadline. Please submit all questions via email to grants@phpda.org. Next, Christina Bernard will go over the LOI application and proposal review process.
Thanks, Whitney. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what you'll actually see when you get to the LOI application form itself. It will start with a few questions on eligibility related to what Mallory described earlier, things like the kind of organization you are, your location, items of that nature. Then you're going to have some questions where you'll need to choose one option. The first is whether it's a service delivery, advocacy, or project evaluation. Then you'll choose at least one of the 3 focus areas Mallory described earlier. You'll then have to note whether this is a new, expanded, or continuation project. If this is brand new work that your organization has never done before, that would be a new program. Continuation would be for roughly the same level and focus of a program that you already do. Choose expansion if this is work that you do already, but you're planning to grow it in some way, such as a new location, more clients, a new population focus, or a new aspect of the program. You'll then choose your target population. You're going to have to make one choice only here. We're asking you to select the primary population focus of your program, whether that be the immigrant community, the homeless population, the LGBTQ community. We know that there are often programs that serve more than one population or overlapping populations, but we want to understand your primary population focus. You'll then enter the funding you're requesting for this single year of funding, and that will be an amount between $50,000 and $200,000. Then finally, in the short questions at the beginning, you'll enter a project summary with a maximum of 250 characters, so just a very short summary that you'll go into more detail on when you get to the longer questions on the next slide. There are 3 narrative questions that will make up the bulk of your LOI. Each one does have a character limit, so pay attention to that as you're working on your application. Next slide. For the first question, we're looking for a description of the health disparity you plan to address. Of course, make sure it's related to one of this year's 3 focus areas. Here you'll provide quantitative information if you have it in this part of the narrative, but overall, this should be something along the lines of population A that we serve has less access to this part of the healthcare system or these health services, or the population that we serve has this specific outcome that is worse than the general population in this particular way. So it should cover both the definition of the target population as well as the services, programs, and health outcomes where you see a disparity within at least one of the 3 focus areas. Next slide. The second question is where you're going to get more information on the program activities you're proposing. This should be an overview of all of the different parts of the program. As Mallory noted, our funds are limited to the health focus work, but we expand that definition beyond medical appointments to include other health work. But nothing beyond the health focus should be included as your program that we're funding. A key note when you're working on this question is to make sure you really connect back to the disparity described in the first question and how your program will narrow that gap and increase equity. Just make sure there's a thread connecting all of the narrative questions in your application. Next slide. For the final question, you were looking for an overview of the impact you expect your program to have. It should be quantitative where possible, such as the number of people you'll serve, the outcomes or changes you expect to see, like improvements in certain health measures, but there can be qualitative changes here as well. We would like to know both what you expect to achieve in this 1 year of funding, as well as the bigger picture long-term change you hope to see. Another note, if this is a continuing or expansion program, we would like you to include in this answer the information on the outcomes you've achieved thus far to show why you think it's important to continue or expand this work. Next slide. We have a few tips we often share with applicants. These are really applicable to our application as well as other funders' applications. First is don't assume everyone reviewing your LOI will be familiar with the kind of work you do. So avoid jargon and acronyms that people may not recognize. And then be clear, concise, especially with character limits in this case. Use data where you can and include some why. Why this population, why these services, why your organization is the right fit for this work. Next slide. One last reminder, as noted, the deadline is by noon at the latest on Monday, January 26th. We cannot make exceptions to that, and we cannot accept late applications. Next slide. A little bit on what happens once your LOI is submitted. It will be reviewed by a panel made up of current and past PHPDA staff and board members. This panel will recommend which LOIs to invite forward for a full application. On February 26th, you'll get an email either letting you know that you were not moving forward or one inviting you to submit a full application. We are available to give feedback to those of you who are not invited forward. For those that are, there will be more detailed information and guidance on the full application requirements at that time, but just a little information generally. The narrative in the application is going to go into more detail on all of the things you described in your LOI application, the disparity, the program, the outcomes. There will also be a full program budget and budget narrative, as well as several organizational financial attachments that need to be submitted with that application. And then just a brief overview on the timing beyond that. If you're invited for a full application, those will be due March 26th. They'll be reviewed by a similar panel. Decisions on which applicants will receive a grant award will be in May. Notifications will be sent May 15th, which leaves about a month and a half for meetings with PHPDA staff and for contracts to be finalized before programs start July 1st. I'll now pass it back to Mallory to close us out.
Thank you, Christina, and thank you for attending the 2026 Major Grant Letter of Intent Pre-Proposal webinar. This recording will be available on our website, and we hope to see you attend either the January 7th webinar or the January 14th webinar, or both. Please come with your questions and make sure that you're submitting any unanswered questions via email by January 22nd. Thank you.